Hello lords and ladies, welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. But more specifically, welcome back to Flashback Friday, a series within a series that focuses solely on older cartoons, typically ones I've seen already and I'm excited to share with you. FF has been absent since December and it's never truly caught on with you guys. But with the content around here lacking, since most of the shows I regularly review on a daily basis, or weekly basis mind you, are on hiatus, I decided it was time to do something about it. And the show I've decided to review is none other than Slugterra. I wouldn't be very surprised if you hadn't heard of this show before. It's underrated in my opinion. Just to briefly summarize what the show is about, it follows a young Eli Shane who descends into the underground world of Slugterra after his father is killed in order to restore peace. In this bizarre cavernous world, there are things called slugs, which are essentially living ammo that slug slingers use to duel and basically solve all their conflicts. It's sort of part Pokemon, part Beyblade in a sense. There's a gotta collect them all mentality with each species of slug having unique abilities. But the fights are closer to Beyblade in that you launch your slug, albeit out of a blaster, and it transforms to quickly fight either the opponent's slug or the opponent themselves. It's difficult to fully explain until you've seen the show yourself. Trust me, it sounds incredibly dumb, but it's actually really freaking cool, especially as the show continues into later seasons. Now, I truly love this show, and this episode is just as strong a start as I remember it being. First off, the premiere is a two-parter, and that's something we don't get too much these days. Story-oriented cartoons with great first episodes. Although there's room for all kinds of shows, I've started to really ache for more shows like Slugterra. Maybe that's why I'm returning to it. Or maybe it's the promise of new episodes. Right off the bat, we get hit with what will be the ongoing conflict and mystery of this show. What happened to Eli's father, and what exactly are those dark slugs? Hint, think shadow Pokemon, and you'll kinda be close. There's always, at least in my mind, a good thing to include in your first episode, an intriguing hook to keep your audience coming back each week to learn more and more. And boy, does this episode deliver in that regard. Plus, we get a really strongly written protagonist in Eli Shane. See, if there's one thing I don't necessarily like, depending on the context, it's when a show starts out with an already incredibly powerful protagonist, specifically when they're meant to be a noob. Sure, it can be fun watching the good guys wreck the baddies, but what's equally, if not more so fun, is seeing a character you've become attached to slowly become stronger. His losses are your losses. His wins are your wins. Eli even first acts like he is that type of character I mentioned.
Will Shane was someone to be afraid of. You're just a kid.
And I'm the kid who's holding the blaster. You willing to try me?
The already all-powerful character. He does this because he thinks being a Shane will just instantly mean something to the people of Slugterra. But nope. It's like obvious comedic character Pronto says right here.
If respect is what you want, you must earn it on the field of battle.
Again, this concept of the protagonist slowly getting stronger after starting at level 0 is such an interesting one for me. You can mold it however you like and get some very gratifying stories out of it. For example, while he's definitely new to Slugterra, Eli is quick on his feet and is able to utilize Trixie advice on the battlefield.
No, wait! I think I know what he's doing.
Just a little longer.
He was waiting for one of the taserlings to misfire.
It also helps in a way that allows her riders to set up the other characters that will very obviously join up with young Shane to help him, namely Trixie, Cord, and Pronto. I personally think these characters are some of the best written characters in all of cartoondom. Seriously, by the end of season 1, you'll probably be as emotionally invested in their lives as I am. Not much of this praise is super apparent in this episode, mind you. You have to keep in mind this is only part 1 of 2, but for now we don't get to know these new characters all that much. And lest I forget, the art style of Slugterra is quite pretty to look at. I'm not going to lie to you and claim, oh boy, that CGI is so good, because it's not. I will say, however, that it does have its charms. It helps that the backdrops of the show look like they could be standalone pieces of art. They've got this really painted look about them. But going back to the CGI, one aspect that shows that there are some limits to what the show can do, especially during the early episodes, is during the slug duels. If you pay attention, sometimes the slugs turn 2D. It'll probably help if I just show it off. See? Not CGI. But I kind of like it, and it's probably intentional, and it reminds me of either video game art or comic book art. This show means a lot to me, and I can't even say it's because of nostalgia, as I only discovered this show 2 years ago. Hopefully, as I review these episodes, I can not only show off some of the great episodes, but maybe even notice some things I didn't notice the first time around. I'm sure there are some not so great moments, and some great moments, that I just can't recall that I'll be able to analyze later on because of these reviews. Hopefully, if you haven't yet seen Slugterra, this review has convinced you to go give it a watch. Maybe you can watch it alongside me. If you're coming back to this video after seeing episode 1, please let me know what you thought of it. Thanks for watching, and take care. Hello, lords and ladies. Welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. It's been months since I released my episode 1 review, and I apologize for that. I don't know why I put it off for so long, because I am still very excited to show off this cartoon to you. If you haven't seen my episode 1 review, click the card on the screen now, or you can click on the link in the comments below. Now, on to the review. Episode 2, The World Beneath Our Feet Part 2, continues Eli's journey through his first dueling tournament. And it fortunately succeeds where many shows do not when it comes to tournament arcs. Instead of spending episodes worth of screen time on the matches, we instead get a very brief montage of Eli's wins, and even when we do get a longer look at a match, it's over before you know it. The shorter duels, of course, are double-edged in that sometimes they seem too short. The one against the triplets is the one I think you could argue ended up being too short. Eli and friends were outmatched for a few moments, but quickly learned the power of teamwork. It was a satisfactory win, but I will admit maybe a few extra seconds or a minute of them struggling would have helped the duel. At the very least, it had one of the episode's funniest moments.
Slug him again, brother! Yes, sister!
Whoa, wait! One of those dudes is a girl?
Also in this episode is the first meeting between the young Shane and Dr. Black, a villain who doesn't even try to hide his sinister plan behind a better sounding name, or less obviously evil color scheme. Not that I'm really complaining. He's a great character, as you'll see in later episodes, and he easily commands fear and respect as a villain, which is a credit to not only the animators and writers, but his voice actor as well. I just thought it was a little funny how even when he tries to come off as someone Shane can work with, he's so clearly not a good person. He might as well have been wearing a sign around his neck that read, "I am a bad guy." Now, as most pilot episodes go, these first 2 episodes were all about setting up the chess pieces for the real game that begins next episode, so there's not really much to talk about. We get some brief insight into Trixie, my cartoon crush, and Cord, so we're able to understand their reasons for dueling. The few fights we actually see Shane fight were great, even if short, and I love how the winner of Shane's final duel lost his slugs by choosing to keep a ghoul. It's a good way of showing off that not even regular slugs want to be around these corrupted creatures. And it shows that Black will be giving these ghouls away in order to hinder Eli's progress. Basically, it's another good episode, and I hope you'll be watching alongside me, as this is a cartoon I was addicted to back when I first discovered it a few years back. And it's gotten more movies recently and even newer episodes, so you know I'm going to be reviewing those when we get to them. Anyway, that's it for this review. Sorry it's a little bare bones, but I'll try harder for episode 3. Thanks for watching, and take care. Hello, lords and ladies. Welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. Coming off the 2-part premiere of Slugterra, you'd think that the next episode would revolve around something smaller, plot-wise. Well, in a way, the trade does, this time featuring the new Shane gang looking to expand their arsenal, which is a smart move considering they're up against Black. But they end up embroiled in some truly shady trading going on between a merchant and Black, leading them to sneak into his headquarters to rescue not only Eli's slug Jules, but the other slugs being turned into ghouls. Not something you'd expect to see them get into by episode 3, right? The usual idea with these types of shows is to start off strong, establish a general plot for the season as well as a villain, then dive headfirst into a series of one-off episodes that are interspersed with episodes devoted to the season's story. And we'll get to those episodes, but it's nice to follow up almost immediately with the main baddies. It helps that this happens so soon because it reinforces the idea that Black is not to be messed with, as one can see by how lucky the gang was to escape with their lives by the end of the episode. And I believe, though can't confirm, that this is one of many times Eli's connections to his slugs, something inherently weird to other slingers, will get he and his friends into some kind of trouble. As great as the other characters are, it is strange how only Eli ever truly stopped to consider the feelings of his slugs.
We gotta go back and get him.
What is it with him and his slugs?
In a way, he's the Ash Ketchum of Slugterra, which is a really apt comparison because in my episode 1 review, you'll recall I ended up comparing this show to Pokemon. I think such a plot point is important to foster early because of the controversial idea of shooting living creatures at high speeds from a gun-like blaster. I don't have a big problem with it, but maybe some parents would. So a character who values his ammo as living creatures first and weapons second is probably a good start at maybe easing some concerns. Of course, it didn't stop parents from hating Pokemon, but what are you gonna do? A great new character introduced this episode is a villain with probably the goofiest name while still being cool, and that is Diablos El Nacho. I haven't a clue what that translates to, but you have to admit he's got a silly name. The closest I could come up with is Devil of the Nacho, and the only nachos I know are the chips and cheese, so yeah. Moving past that, he really is one of my favorite characters in Slugterra. The character just exudes toughness. I mean, do you want to know how tough he is? Tough enough to freaking dodge out of the way of the slugs and then punch a ramstone. The dude couldn't get any cooler if he tried. At this point in the story, we don't really know more about him, but just from my vague recollection, I do believe he has a decent backstory in later episodes. We'll just have to wait and see, but for now I am excited that he's finally been introduced. He'll provide a great nemesis for the Shane gang outside of Black and his random cronies. I really enjoyed where this episode went, and not much felt forced or out of place. It was a smart story decision to make a move against Black, if just to let us viewers really know that he won't be easy to fight. It gives a real incentive for our heroes to get stronger, which is all you can ask of in any action cartoon. Anyway, what did you think of this episode? I hope you're watching this series alongside me, and if you aren't, why not? Let me know in the comments below. Oh, and question of the day. What is your favorite slug introduced thus far? Thanks for watching, and take care. Hello lords and ladies, welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. Up to this point in the story, Eli and his gang haven't had much success combating Black's corrupted slugs. They're too powerful and unpredictable, which has led to them being outmatched and having to use any tactic to live. This episode, the Slugout, has finally given the gang their ace in the hole. After Eli's blaster breaks, he and the gang traveled to Quiet Lawn Cavern, a town quite literally modeled after quiet suburban life, in order to find Red Hook, who happens to be the only man capable of fixing blasters. I'm a little unsure how large Slugterra is, but the fact that only one aging man can fix a blaster seems like a huge problem for the residents of the various caverns. I guess as long as they can keep manufacturing new ones, it won't matter, but it's still unbelievable no one has attempted to learn to fix a blaster. An encounter with a local gang, hired by Black, is what gives the Shane gang their ace in the hole, a healer slug that Eli names Doc. The final confrontation with this Hula gang reveals that this slug can cure ghouls. I really love this little new twist in the story because obviously the characters can't face the ghouls with just brute strength. They're simply too strong. And their cartoon could have gone there, to be sure. It's what other action cartoons would do. Have an incredibly strong opponent, just introduce some new transformation or powers that let you surpass or be on equal footing with the villains. I'm not saying anything is wrong with that. No. Dragon Ball did it, Naruto does it, and plenty of other non-Japanese cartoons. The problem arises when that is the only solution a writer can think of. It brings stagnation, and depending on its execution, boredom. Despite this ace in the hole, boondock slugs are still very rare, so we won't face a situation quite so soon where the Shane gang has a huge leg up against Black, and from a storytelling perspective, that's pretty good. We want our heroes to succeed, sure, but there's just something about watching them slowly work their way up to that point with small victories a la Star Wars Rebels that's really exciting. Another great thing to remark about this episode is how Shane uses something that caused a huge problem at the start of the episode, namely Pronto and his sonic snare, to his advantage later in the episode, by causing the Granuker slugs to help take out the bad guys. I was a little skeptical at the plan because it should have managed to bring all the slugs down across the cavern and destroyed way more than it did. So this counts as a negative. But it also illustrates Eli's cunning solutions to problems besides just shoot until you win. I always love a hero who can use his brain for more than punching his way out of a tight jam. In conclusion, the Slugout is a very strong entry in the Slugterra series, and it presents viewers with imaginative solutions to problem solving and gives us something to pull us back in next episode by introducing a way for the main characters to combat this black problem. Anyway, that's it for my review. Let me know what your reactions are to this episode by leaving a comment below. And the question of the day is, if you had a boondock slug, what would you name it? Try to think up some clever medical puns if you can. Thanks for watching, and take care. Hello lords and ladies, welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. Deadweed, the 5th episode, is the series' first holiday-themed episode, and it certainly lives up to it. Shane gets the gang trapped in an old, seemingly haunted gold mine in his hunt for Fright Guy slugs. It's not very long until they encounter some incredibly creepy ghosts.
Ghosts?
I told you so!
I really dig the designs they gave the ghosts in this episode, as they're more than just pale versions of the humans they once were, but instead have creepy glowing red eyes and pointed fangs. It really gives them a huge creepy factor. Even more interesting is that this episode pulls back the curtain on how Black is creating his slugs, and it's through something known as dark water. Now, rewatching this episode, the dark water concept really reminds me of the red lyrium from Dragon Age. In that series, the dwarves stumble upon it the same way the trolls do in Slugterra. While dark water doesn't have quite the same effect on humans as red lyrium does on the humans in Dragon Age, red lyrium does have a similar corrupting influence on humans as dark water does to slugs. They even share the same red color. I think this little addition to the plot lets us viewers know the depths in which Black will go to get what he wants. We've seen how vicious he is in previous episodes, but now we know that he'll mess with some very powerful forces. We'll learn exactly what forces in later episodes. While normally any holiday-themed episodes of a show tend to be largely standalone, I love how this one does try to connect it back to the main plot with the addition of Darkwater, and I think that helps this episode out a lot. The spooky atmosphere and the hilarious superstitions the Shane gang, besides Shane himself, have also make it a fun episode to watch on Halloween.
What's a Halloween?
It's, an old Shane tradition. Once a year we dress up in scary costumes and get candy from the neighbors.
Sounds like extortion.
Trixie makes a good point if you think about it. And I don't think there's much left to say. It was a pretty simple episode, even if it was fun. So let me know what you thought or if I missed something. Thanks for watching, and take care. Hello lords and ladies, welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. Now, you could write off episode 6 of Slugterra, Slug Run, as your typical wacky race-esque episode, and you'd be partially right. You've got the colorful vehicles in the form of mecha beasts, and the hectic racetrack filled to the brim with deadly obstacles for its racers to overcome. But it does this all really well, so I'm not really complaining. Plus, really the idea of using the mecha beast in my mind gives it a flair of originality. As with any race-themed episode, our protagonist Eli needs a good reason to be racing. A rival of sorts. And he finds that in Vance, a professional racer with a big ego. He fills out all the usual characteristics of a rival. Full of himself, incredibly skilled, more so than our hero, and someone who ends up giving advice to our hero, even if he doesn't want to hear it. It's not something I really minded this time around because Vance ends up being a really cool character by the end of the episode, even risking Black coming after him by letting Eli have the crystallized slug. If anything, Vance could probably end up joining Eli later on with any other allies he and his gang make along the way. What's funny is the writers didn't stop at giving Eli a rival to race against, but even gave Pronto his very own.
We meet again.
Yes! Nice to meet you too.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine. Wait! No, it is me, Pronto, your lifelong nemesis.
Something that definitely adds more of a comedic element to the episode to lighten the mood in between the dangerous traps and the drama. In fact, most of the funny moments in this episode belong to Pronto and Cito. I'm glad this was a part of the episode because while it still would have been an interesting episode on its own, I feel like it wouldn't have been as good an episode. And in a twist even I didn't see coming, despite watching this before, the Molenoid rival Cito turns out to be a mole. As he himself says,
You could say I'm a mole who's a mole on a mole, tripling my molitude to unfathomable awesomeness.
in the end, while this episode still has a slight connection to the larger story of the season, it is still our first sorta kinda filler episode. Luckily, despite a somewhat rocky start, the episode really proves itself with the hilarious scenes with Pronto and the friendly-unfriendly rivalry between Eli and Vance. How about you? What did you think of this episode? Let me know down in the comments. And for the question of the day, which I'm probably not doing as often as I think I should, which of the Mecha Beasts shown would you love to ride? Thanks for watching, and take care. Hello lords and ladies, welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. Episode 8, Shadows and Light, sees the Shane Gang dealing with Lock and Load, two almost classically comedic villains, and even the Shadow Clan. It's cool to see the clan make a return after we last saw them a few episodes ago, I believe. And with their reappearance comes even more questions that we don't have answers to just yet. Who is the leader of the clan? And what did Burpee say to let them pass? All very good questions that, if memory serves me, will get answered eventually. I do like how the story teases us with these questions in this episode, as it definitely keeps you guessing and wanting to watch to find out what happens next. The plot of the episode, though, has Eli and his friends venturing to a dead cavern thanks in part to some dark water. While the two villains of this episode, Lock and Load, weren't the best characters, they were funny at times. So I can at least give them that. They essentially only showed up every so often to impede our hero's quest, and in the end the Shadow Clan grabs them. The way it ended like that makes their fate seem even grimmer than you think would be shown in a show like this. Of course, I've got no problem with that. I'm a fan of mature content in shows targeted at children. Another element this episode provides is some reassurance that Eli's slug, Doc, probably won't be incredibly overpowered. In fact, he's nerfed pretty quickly. Eli tries to use Doc to purify the dark water, but it's only with the help of mini Fandango slugs that Doc is able to do so. I could be reading into this, but I think that's the writer's way of saying Doc is not going to be some Deus Ex Machina, a way for the characters to randomly solve their problems, or become something the fans stop and ask, why didn't they just use Doc? Plus, it gives the episode this super positive vibe, what with the slugs and humans coming together to revive a cavern. Feels good, man. Overall, I think this was a quality episode. Maybe not as riveting as previous episodes, but it has plenty of good moments. And the only really negative thing that I have about the episode was the villains. I did like their punny names, however, and despite one of them being dumber than a sack of rocks, the two never fell for the whole, we trapped them, so there's no way they'll return to cause problems thing that most other baddies fall for in other shows. But what did you think of this episode? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and take care. Hello lords and ladies, welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. With episode 8, Dawn of the Slug, it seems we're blessed to have 2 Halloween episodes in the first season of Slugterra, which is just perfect considering it was October, not so much anymore. So what sets this episode apart from Deadweed? Zombies. Mall zombies. The worst kind of zombies. I guarantee if you're a fan of zombies, you're going to enjoy this episode. Well, Maybe not if you like your zombies to be rotting and a connoisseur of flesh and brains. This episode comes with a twist that I can respect, given how ravenous people are for the zombie genre these days, with shows like The Walking Dead, iZombie, Z Nation, and more. What is that twist? These aren't flesh-eating zombies. Oh no. These are your grandpa's zombies, aka the original voodoo zombies. As if the swirly red eyes weren't a dead giveaway, by the time we're introduced to the villain with the coolest sounding name, Mr. Saturday, you'd have figured it out. The plot of this episode is your basic, by the numbers, zombies have taken over a mall type story. Heck, 16, another Canadian cartoon, did it, and so has Pin Zero. That's not me knocking the show or this episode or anything. I'm just warning you to not expect anything else original besides the voodoo twist. The characters happily stumble across a seemingly empty mall, zombies show up, the characters let it pretend to be zombies, they meet a mall cop, and so on. As I said, the usual. That doesn't really stop the episode from being fun though. While the plot is what you'd expect, the added nature of the show's premise makes it a little bit different. The Shane gang slug their way out of being zombie nabbed quite a few times, and of course, the Hypno Slug is a fun twist on the zombie genre. If you count returning to the original concept, a fun twist. Most of the comedy in this episode comes from Shane, attempting to use his vast zombie movie knowledge to aid them in their escape of the mall.
Not sure. In the movies, the heroes get zombified before they can use any of it. But we'll figure something out.
Obviously that doesn't work, and fun times occur. I do so like when Shane's obvious topsider nature shines through, as it does in this episode, and even in the Deadweed episode as well. So far, no one has really questioned him on it too much, but I'm sure we're approaching such a reveal soon. If you enjoy zombies and want a fun, spoopy Halloween episode to watch instead of the limitless gore and horror movies out there, then you should have a fun evening with Dawn of the Slug. It doesn't stray too far away from the tropes of the zombie film genre, but when it does, it's fun. What did you think of this episode? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching, and take care. Hello lords and ladies, welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. Episode 9, Club Slug proves the old saying, if it sounds too good to be true, probably is. In the episode, the foolish Pronto spends half the Shane gang's money to book them a vacation/slug boot camp, and it goes as well as you'd expect. Namely, the boot camp instructor is actually scamming people, and it leads to a duel. The episode is more along the lines of a typical episode of Slugterra. It's not bad, but it essentially takes an existing concept and applies to the show without too much difference. And because of that, I'm almost not sure what to really say besides it exists? Eli is again the only one in his group to really notice anything is off, a recurring theme in the show thus far, which I didn't have anything against until it started to make everyone else look incompetent. I feel like it's one thing to point out that Eli maybe has a deeper understanding of his slugs, besides the standard concept of them just being ammo, and another to say his friends just don't see them as more than that. But we are still early into the show, and I do recall that sort of thing changing, so maybe chalk this as a smaller criticism than anything too major. I guess another criticism is the other guests at the boot camp were a little too generic. You've got your snob, your edgy goth chick, and the dumb jock, and nothing was ever done to add more depth to them. Yes, it's a one-off adventure, but the writers could have done more to make them more sympathetic. As for things I did like, the idea of the slugs getting pumped up but quickly drained is interesting. Maybe not as much as the corrupted slugs, but whatever. Oh, and the idea of Eli's friends, or at least Cord, beginning to get upset over losing to a newcomer, Eli. I don't know if this gets expanded on in upcoming episodes, but I would love to see it happen. It would be some much needed drama amongst the gang. And that's Club Slug. It's not a special episode by any means, and if it doesn't sound good, you can probably skip it entirely. However, if you want to see the gang take time off and be bamboozled, this episode has it all. That's it from me. Now share your thoughts on this episode below. If you want to watch these episodes along with me, consider buying them from Amazon, off a link in the description. I think it's also on Netflix. And for more content like this, consider subscribing. Thanks for watching. Take care. Hello lords and ladies, welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. The hunt is on for a crazy rare slug in the episode Endangered Species, as the Shane gang race off from the start of the episode to be the first to figure out the powers of the Enigmo slug. And that's as far as the episode really goes with that. It's a fun episode, don't get me wrong, it's just a summary really represents all that essentially happens. It's simple and straightforward. The characters battle other hunters, run into one of those hunters' traps, and Eli is hit with the Enigmo slug and sees double for much of the running time. Like I said, it's a fun little episode that doesn't do much else. What was cool is that, from what I recall, the tiny little detail of Eli seeing something else, thanks to the rare slug, is foreshadowing some later developments that I won't spoil, but looking back, it's nice to see the show seed some more continuity. Pronto was especially a fun character in this episode, but then he usually is. The rest of the Shane gang fall into a variety of humorous traps, so that's also a fun part of the episode. And Eli has some really amazing moments while he's seeing double, so that's nice too. I don't know, there's just not really much else to say. It's a good episode. How about you enlighten me with your own thoughts about the episode? Share down below and make sure to subscribe for more reviews like this, but probably longer and more thought out. Thanks for watching, and take care. Hello lords and ladies, welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. As we get closer to the season finale, Dr. Black's evil machinations return to the forefront of the plot. This time in his plan to force people to travel via his railroad by ghouling the mecha beasts that slug slingers use. I found this little twist to be rather interesting. It's a scary thought that Black can basically use his ghouling process on almost anything as long as it has to do with slug energy. The episode doesn't really delve too much into exploring that scary idea, but I give props to the writers for coming up with even more ways Black can corrupt things. It does feel like it's been a while since we last heard from Black though, which is probably my one problem with this season. I don't mind not every episode having to do with him, but it does feel like he pops up very infrequently, at least from the last few episodes to my recollection. In terms of quality, I think Mecha Mutiny is a standard but still equally fun episode. The Shane gang investigate their malfunctioning mechas and in turn, as per usual, come across another Black's evil plans. It's got comedy, action, and intrigue. What else could you ask from a Slugterra episode? There's even a moment where the characters face off against their own corrupted mechas. Oh, and a giant elephant one. It's a great showdown, even if it does get solved with Doc. I did say there's a danger in him being a Deus Ex Machina, or a Slug Ex Machina in this case, but honestly the situation called for him, and I don't think there was another way possible without letting the mechas just blow up. Mecha Mutiny is a good episode, but there's honestly not much to talk about, so why not sound off in the comments below with your own thoughts on it? I'd appreciate it. And if you'd like to watch alongside me, you can buy the season on Amazon, probably on YouTube, or you can watch it on Netflix. Be sure to also check out my merch store or Patreon if you'd like to support the channel. You can specifically catch new videos of mine sometimes days or hours before they're released on YouTube by pledging to the $5 tier. Thanks for watching, and take care. Hello lords and ladies, welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. Undertow is the 12th episode, and based on its start, I could have sworn this would actually be more about Black than what we actually focused on. We get teased with Shane and friends blowing up one of his factories and riding away from his enforcers, managing to slip away via the waterways beneath Slugterra, thanks to one of the few instances Pronto has been truly useful in this show. And that's about it when it comes to Black and his men. Well, no, they do appear later in the episode, but are almost comically subdued thanks to the newly introduced pirate character, Malvolio Drake, who, as it happens, is one of the best parts of this episode. His eccentric behavior and pirate ways really lends itself to the Slugterra universe. As such, he's a highly welcome addition to the show and really spices up Slugterra by introducing the pirate culture. Much of the comedy in this episode involves him and his interactions with the Shane gang, who he imprisons after attacking them. It helps keep him from feeling as villainous as Black, and I think that's a good thing. Drake isn't incompetent, but the dry wit replies from his first mate and how quickly his crew abandoned his desire to go down with his ship prove he's not the best captain either. If he had an equivalent, I'd liken him to Doof from Phineas and Ferb. He's the comedic villain, basically. Another highlight of the episode are the strategies employed. Most of the show takes place on land. Slug duels are essentially duck, cover, and blast. On the open seas, things take a different turn. It's fun seeing the Shane Gang adapt to that, thanks in part to Core's modifications to their mechas, and then later commandeering one of Black's ships. I don't know if I'd want to see them go to sea too much, but it does help add some variety to a landlocked series. Basically, what we've got here is another great Slugterra episode. It really helps that the show can still surprise viewers with different locales and plots. If anything, this proves a video game adaptation would have no trouble adapting the series. Unfortunately, they have yet to make a proper game of Slugterra outside of mobile, so we'll probably never see that happen. But anyway, what did you think of Undertow? Did you enjoy it? Let me know down below. To watch alongside me, you can buy or watch Slugterra on Amazon, YouTube, or Netflix. And while you're still here, check out my merch store and Patreon if you'd like to support my channel. Thanks for watching, and take care. Hello lords and ladies, welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. Mario Bravado is an entertaining but highly ridiculous episode about Pronto being thrown into prison for spitting gum out, and a Karate Kid-esque training sequence involving pizzas. Like, it doesn't get more weird than that, even for a show about shooting slugs out of blasters. My only major complaint is that the in media res whirlwind opening made me feel like I'd accidentally skipped part of the episode, and the way it was edited had it come off like an episode trailer of some kind, not the actual start to the episode, although it did help speed the episode up to the more interesting parts, such as Eli training with Mario. The whole concept of training for some showdown, tournament, or test of skill by doing the exact opposite has been done to death by now, so much so that it was parodied once in Family Guy to obviously realistic and hilarious results.
You know, the exam's in 3 hours.
Oh crap, all we've done is work out.
We should study.
Right.
Despite that, I did enjoy it in this episode solely because of how utterly bizarre it was. That, or maybe I was just hungry for pizza at the time. It was also nice to introduce a possible new member of the Shane Gang, not that I have any memory of him actually joining up. He only gets a bit of screen time or hint of backstory, but Mario's a pretty cool dude. There's not much else to the episode beyond them actually going to save Pronto on a runaway train, but it's a good episode nonetheless. If you've seen it, let me know your thoughts on it. Also, what pizza in this episode sounded the most delicious? Sound off below. Thanks for watching, and take care.